You know, it's funny. It's you guys have become the constant thing in my life. You know, I've been moving around a lot the last couple of years, being in all these different places, and always the rhythm of them. You know, Mother Mondays, Taco Tuesday, Advaita Thursday, Vedic Christianity, and then my Sunday with the Colorado group. I was talking to Swami Satchimayananda last night when I arrived, and telling him how, one of the wonderful things that computers brought is that you had all of your files and all of your information and all of your pictures and all of your music and all of your writings with you all the time, no matter where you are, you can access them. And who would have thought that that included the devotees? You know, you can keep the
You get
devotees.
so attached to it when you don't have Wi-Fi. I feel lost.
It's true. It's true. Well, the Avikarananda, the other Swami here this morning. Oh, by the way, what a delightful Swami. Oh, his eyes just glisten like little blue diamonds, just so bright, so clear. You feel it gives happiness just to look at him. Don't tell him I'm saying this, I guess, but I really noticed last night when I saw him, just wow, immediately he just reminded me of happiness, just joy in his eyes. It's beautiful. You know what we become as the ego dissolves, it's just beautiful. You know, everything that we see in these swamis that are, you know, it's just inspiring. It's wonderful to know that that's who we are, as people. And if we can stop being something and just be, that you are by nature, that beauty, that joy, that presence, that attention, that love. And this is why we practice. This is why we struggle. This is why we push that ego out of the way, because that self is everything we hope to be. When we are identified with the ego state, our ideal is our own self, but our identity with our impure self, our small self, our fallen self, convinces us that we have to work to become that which we were before we made the mess, before we decided that we needed things from outside, before we decided that we weren't enough. To return to that light, it's amazing to think that the gift you are to the world is not what you do for the world. It's just your being in the world, just your very self. And the more you can purify that self so that that divine light of your nature is what people experience in you, that is the gift, not what you do. That comes and goes. That's gone by sunset every day. But what you are burns, remains. That's why a Jesus, a Buddha, a Rama, a Krishna, a Holy Mother, that's why we remember them, because they were fully present for us. They were fully here. They were not divided in their desires, divided in their goals and ideas, divided in their idea of history. They had let that all drop, and they were divided. They were fully, fully present at the point of the moment where time isn't. oh, oh man, that's wow. All right. Well, we're continuing on here in Sri Nisargadatta's I Am That, and looking at Advaitic ideals and the path of knowledge, the path of jnana. And Maharaj said last week, just as we were ending, he says, and this idea that we've talked about, that the macrocosm and the microcosm are the same, that reality is really a fractal. In every cell in your body, the entire universe is indicated. That there is no separateness. We are this. If you're a mathematician, you'll know what I'm saying. It's like on a fractal, you can zoom in infinitely and lose no detail. And you can zoom out infinitely and lose no detail. That there's no end in either direction because the equation folds in on itself. And this is what Vivekananda realized when he was in that valley in India, meditating on that rock by that tree. You can go visit that rock and tree, actually. I had never even heard that story until I was over there in 2000. And I went and saw the the place where Vivekananda passed out from thirst, and was the Muslim man came and gave him a cucumber and some water and took care of him. That was in the same place or near the same place that he had that realization that the macrocosm and the microcosm are the same. And so within us, we are a copy of the universe. So within you, you have Shiva, the absolute unchanging, and you have you have the manifest world to the Gyani or mother to the devotee, and both of those exist within you. That you have here the manifested world, as we've talked about. You can verify with your very simple thought that this world exists only in your mind. And the conversation is there anything outside of ourselves? And from the Gyani perspective and understanding, and from the teachings of the sages, from their seeing and their knowing, there is no outside world. So all of the imagery of our mind that we think we're taking in through the senses and that we're seeing it directly is untrue. We are not having a direct experience of the world because there is no material. That's why science can't find and define what matter is. Because it simply isn't there. That's a misnomer, and we're going to learn that at some point. And that's why, with this quantum physics, this idea of the manifest universe as consciousness is entering into the picture. You know, and so within us, we've got that macrocosm itself, Shakti and Shiva, the absolute unchanging and the changing world. The changing world is here in the mind. And we create a thought of ourself and live as the thought of ourself. That's why we have attributes, and that's why we are amongst the objects of the mind, because we have placed ourselves there by creating a thought of ourself. And when we learn and begin to understand that we are not that self, and we take that, or not that not that little s self, we are not a thought of ourself, that we exist before we have a thought of ourself. And if we can find that self that is before the thought, you're halfway to the goal, halfway to infinity. And so this getting rid of the thought of ourself is so difficult because we are convinced that the thought world that we inhabit as a thought is real. And so in that silence, we step back. And so here in this statement, Maharaj has a very poetic way of saying the same thing.
Maharaj, which section, Maharaj?
Oh, we are in, let's see here, 51. Sorry. Be indifferent to pain and pleasure, and we're about a page and a half into it there.
Thank you, Maharaj. Sorry.
No worries. That I should have done that to begin with. So he says the last thing he says that same thing that we just talked about, but in a very poetic way. He says the mind exists in two states, as water and as honey. The water vibrates at the least disturbance, while the honey, however disturbed, returns quickly to immobility. Right? So he's kind of he's doing honey instead of ice. And so we're not talking about perfect realization and perfect delusion, which you could probably say water and ice instead of water and honey. But we're talking about the proximity of delusion and a proximity of knowledge. And so we have water and honey, so the mind can still be disturbed, can still be moved. But that stillness that's there, I like to, of course, everybody knows I sort of tend toward bhakti. But this notion that I really think this honey, if you think as a bhakta, if you're a devotee and God is your reality, what happens in that is that this honey would be equivalent to the atmosphere of the inner temple, the shrine of the heart. You know, that we always judge a temple. Well, it depends on who you are. Those people more in the senses will judge a temple by its beauty. But those people who have like to do their practice and sit in contemplation will judge a temple by its atmosphere, that you walk in and feel the stillness there, you feel the peace there. And everything external is an external manifestation of an internal reality, right? And so a temple is not something outside of yourself. The temple out there is an external manifestation of an internal reality. And when we stop living as the thought of ourself, then we're allowed to enter the temple that the body is. And your practice will no longer happen here, but your practice happens here. And that atmosphere that you value in a wonderful temple becomes your own atmosphere. I saw this in Swami Prabhutananda. He could walk into a room and that room would still immediately. I remember the most stark time that I noticed that was on Super Bowl Sunday. We were having an after lecture dinner, and there were 25 men in there. Of course, the big conversation, which bored me to tears, was the coming football game. And they tell me team names. I have to tell them, well, tell me uniform colors. I don't know the football names. I just know what colors they're wearing. And so they were all talking and all this hoopla in the room. And Swami Prabhupada would walk in, and without saying anything, without requiring anything, without needing anything. So what I'm saying is he didn't demand that the room be quiet. He simply walked into the room, and within a moment, everybody would be quiet because he brought an atmosphere with him. And so this honey of the mind, this stillness that he's talking about here, is that when you are established in the heart, established in the truth, the self, the absolute unchanging, and from that position, as it were, all of this is very metaphorical, you're observing the changing. The more that you become accustomed to that, the more that peace that passes understanding, or that silence of the inner world, becomes your atmosphere. And that is what prevents you're being disturbed by what's going on around you. You have this place that you are sitting, that you are at peace, and the things outside take some time to get through, and you have time to get out of the way. Just let it pass on through. If you ever saw that movie Dune, there's a scene in there where the warriors have this armor that's a force field that surrounds them, and anything that hits the force field suddenly goes at extremely slow motion. So if somebody's trying to stab you, they push that sword in, and as soon as it hits that field, the sword just moves real slow, and you have time to get out of the way, even with bullets and whatnot there. And so I don't know if you're a science fiction fan, there you have a spiritual reference in a science fiction movie, because everything is God, or everything is that ultimate reality. I have to start respecting my Jnana a bit more here. So by its very nature, so the mind exists in two states, as water and as honey. The water vibrates with the least disturbance, while the honey, however disturbed, returns quickly to its immobility. And the questioner says, well, by its very nature, the mind is restless. It can perhaps be made quiet, but it is not quiet by itself. Okay, that's our experience of mind. So he's talking about what our experience of mind is. And Maharaj says, you may have a chronic fever and shiver all the time. It is the desires and fears that make the mind restless. Free from all negative emotions, it is quiet, right? And I'm going to throw in something here that doesn't, it might be helpful with this, is that you see, he's not doing it here because he's at that level of truth where he knows that all is mind, right? And so he talks about the nature of the mind, and it's the contents of the mind that are the problem. And this is all very true. But there's another paradigm, another way of viewing it that I've found extremely helpful, because in this paradigm, you're responsible for quieting your mind. And that is not a possible paradigm. Why? Because that's, like we've mentioned, that's like trying to still the waves of the swimming pool while being in the swimming pool. And so for the effective way of really practicing this, it is to understand that you are not the mind. And so it does not matter what the condition of the mind is for your experience. If you know yourself to be outside of mind or before mind, and you can observe the mind and then let the mind go that it's not yours, then the mind stills of its own accord, and you're not responsible for doing. You're simply responsible for you see, I'm running into that same problem because you're not the doer. So how can you be responsible for anything in your meditation? But you are responsible for holding a presence as witness of mind and of body. And then you find that all of its problems and all of its story about where you are and what's wrong with you and what you need to do and where you need to be and how far from realization you are and how worldly you think you are, and all of those miseries are unrelated to you, unrelated to you. And so you don't have to engage with them at all. And then this same thing will happen, right? You will get rid of the negative desires because those things are motivated by the ego. They serve the ego in some way, which is you, that small you. And that egoism then becomes your definition of what you are and what your troubles are and what your story is and where you are in it. But you are not in a story, and you are not in a line of thinking, and you are not the result of summaries of thinking. You are always the same, and you have been realized for eons, but you're not appreciating it because you're not picking it up. You're leaving it laying there, and you're picking up all the other stuff on the table, right? And so you haven't found it yet, but it is there, complete and ready and finished, and always will be and always has been. And that's why they say when you realize God, you know that nothing was accomplished. You know that there was no doing, there was no attainment. You simply realize, I have always been this and have always thought I was that, right? And so, and Maharaj is saying, he says, so that's why if you have a chronic fever and you're shivering all the time, that may seem like it's going to go on forever because that's your experience of yourself. But get rid of the fever and the shivering stops, and you realize it had nothing to do with yourself, that was an overlay of your experience of yourself. So the questioner says, well, you cannot protect the child from negative emotions. As soon as it is born, it learns pain and fear. Hunger is a cruel master and teaches dependence and hate. The child loves the mother because she feeds it and hates her because she is late with food. Our unconscious mind is... Yes? Did somebody say something? Sorry. Our unconscious mind is full of conflicts which overflow into the conscious. We live on a volcano. We are always in danger. I agree that the company of people whose mind is peaceful has a very soothing effect, but as soon as I am away from them, the trouble starts. This is why I come periodically to India to seek the company of my guru. Right? So this is his experience, and it's very common to all of us. Unfortunately, none of it's true. Unfortunately, all of it is a story. Maharaj says, you think you are coming and going, right? The way I like to realize this, a fun way of doing it, is where are you right now? I'm here. And what time is it? It's right now. And that is true no matter what time it is, and no matter where you are. And that's not just a function of speech. That's a description of a reality we know internally and came up with words for, right? But never think about that. So that we are unchanging because we are always here, regardless of the change in colors, sounds, smells, sights, and touches, right? Regardless of that, we are always present, right? And the time is so artificial, it's not even funny. You know, the shrine in here and the shrine in Santa Barbara do not have clocks in their shrine. And at first, that irritated me. I was like, well, how am I supposed to know when I've done my hour? Right. So you don't know that clock. And at first, and then I was bringing my phone so that I could tell on my phone, oh, okay, I could go down and sneak a little touch, on the phone, and it lights up and I know what time it is. Well, what a horrible disturbance that is for your meditation, especially if you're having a restless day and you're sitting there tapping on your phone, 4 times a minute to find out if you're done or not. Right? But if you don't put a clock in your shrine, it really changes the experience. You can let go of that little bit of the thought of the external world that keeps dragging you back to your schedule. You can just let go. And if you use your mala, you can do it by the number of times around your mala. And that's something you don't have to think about. It indicates itself when that little fuzzy things come through your fingers. Oh, okay, it's been 20 minutes. Groovy, right? And then once that gets going, you'll forget at some point. The mala will even cease to move in your hand, and you're just gone. And at that point, you understand it doesn't matter what time it is in the shrine. I'm always in my shrine, and the time never changes here, right? And that becomes our reality. And you better be in a monastery or a cave when that happens. It doesn't work well in your cubicle at work. So you think you are coming and going, passing through various states and various moods. Why? Because the thought of you is passing through many states of mind, right? And many moods. I see things as they are, momentary events presenting themselves to me in rapid succession, deriving their being from me, yet definitely neither me nor mine. Among phenomena, I am not one, nor subject to any. Now, this is inconceivable. It's easy to read that little sentence there, but what it is telling you cannot be conceived of, and it's very important. Your nature, what you are, is not a point. You are not a particular. You are the possibility of all points. All right? The best way to think this, to understand this, is in your dream, which we always go back to. Your dream works because you choose a particular point in that dream to be. I'm still a point of reference in the dream when I dream at night. And so from that point of reference, then I can enjoy the story of that point through all of the other unknown points, which I have decided are not me, right? But in reality, in that dream, you are equally everything in that dream. Are you not? There's no couches in your head. There's no oceans in your head. None of that's there. You create that within your own mind, and then you place yourself within it, right? And here's some fun. Sri Nisargadatta has told us in the past that there is no external and internal, right? Just like in the dream, none of your dream is outside of you. The whole thing is in you, right? But when you pick that point in the dream to say, this is me and mine right here, this point, and the rest is not, then it becomes internal and external, doesn't it? Right? This which is me is internal, that which is not me is external, even though the truth of the dream is that the whole dream is in you. And Sri Nisargadatta, Mr. N, says that the way that we determine what is external and what is internal is by what we know and what we don't know. That which is fully known, we place inside of ourselves. That which we do not know fully, we place external to ourselves, right? And so in the dream, that's the way it is. And that is how ego happens, because ego is narrative. Ego is the story that you live. You cannot have a story if everything is known, right? Because a story is always about discovery. It's always about finding out what you don't know. Every story. You can't have a story if you know it all. Meaning that if I, in my dream, ceased to be a single point of reference that I know as me, that I know fully, and I broke the rule of the dream and understood that everything in this dream is me, and that my point of reference can legally be anywhere, in the bed, in the point of the spindle at the end of the bed, on the dresser, the light switch. I can be any of that because I created that as much as I created the sense, the I that I am in the dream. And if I am all of those points at once, there is no dream. Why? Because there is no unknown. And if there is no unknown, there is no narrative. I cannot create a story because there's nothing I have to discover. There's nothing I have to learn. There's nothing I have to find out. There can be no problem. Understand? And so he's saying here, you think you're coming and going. You think you're passing through various states and moods. I see things that, he says, but I see things as they are. Which means there's no narrative in them. Things are not telling you of themselves what they are. You are knowing what they are because they are you, right? So I see things as they are, momentary events, right? Because they don't stay the same, presenting themselves to me, right? I'm the observer, the eternal witness. This constant flow of unrepeating change is presenting itself to me in rapid succession, deriving their being from me, right? That dream that you're having cannot have a reality of its own. You are the sustainer of that dream. You have to be there. You have to be there for that dream to exist. Yet definitely neither me nor mine, right? So yes, well, my dream, yes, but not my dream because it's a universal dream. It's a dream from every point in it, and everybody else is just another point in that dream, presenting themselves to me in rapid succession, deriving their being from me, yet definitely neither me nor mine. Among phenomena, I am not one nor subject to any. That's what we're saying. You're not one point of reference. You are not a chosen point to see the world. You are all. Your point of reference when you're illumined, and this is actually what happens to Ramakrishna, if I could be so bold as to make this claim. When Ramakrishna his body would just become like a statue, there was no self-awareness in it. He hadn't gone anywhere, right? He, at that moment, had become every point of reference in that room simultaneously. There was nothing unknown to him. And the body was no longer being driven by an ego, right? It was no longer subject to anything, right? And it was no longer the personality that we know as Ramakrishna. Now that we continued, as the observers in the room, we continued to see his body and we continued to call it Ramakrishna. Why? That's not a statement about the condition of Ramakrishna or the body. It's a statement of our condition. We always think ourselves to be the body. So when we see another body, we automatically think that that's a person and they're inhabiting their body as well. But when Ramakrishna would go into samadhi, it's not that his body just froze and he went to mother, he went to someplace else. That's not what happened. He was no longer a particular. He was not one point. He was a one point in infinite places. That's why they say, what do they say? They say that we're a circle with an infinite radius and a point at the center. But God is a circle with an infinite radius and a point and an infinite number of centers. Right? So there is no particular. This is why it's so hard to realize, because we keep trying to use this stupid machine up here to realize what we are outside of it. And you can't, because this always needs a point of reference. The thought of you always has to be a point, right? You have to be that witness. But in truth, you are every point. You are not a particular. You are a universal. And to conceive of that is impossible. And that's why you have to know you are not the mind and you are not in the dream. The dream is in you. Alameda is in me. That's what we're trying to understand, but we can't use the tool of mind to understand it, because the mind in it, with me and mine in it, is simply the content of all of our senses going on, right? We remove that me and mine out, then it becomes pure mind. And that is the same as Brahman. Right? Among phenomena, I am not one. I am not a point of reference, nor am I subject to any. Why? Because if I'm all the points, there's no subject. There's just one. There's just isness. That infinite collection of points. I am not one, nor subject to any. I am independent so simply and totally that your mind, accustomed to opposition and denial, cannot grasp it. I mean literally what I say. I do not need oppose or deny, because it is clear to me that I cannot be the opposite or the denial of anything, because I am, exists at every point in that dream, either as the experiencer, if it just happens to be the one point I'm identified with, or as the experience, if it's any other points that I'm not identifying with in that dream. I am just beyond, right? If I'm all points, I can't be described by any of those points. And it's not that I'm separate and located somewhere. It's that I'm the sum total of those points. And even as the sum total of those points, that witness is still not a point and not a me, right? It's an is, and it's universal, and it holds the potential of all things everywhere all at once. And it looks like silence to the observer, but it is not an absence. That silence within is a fullness. It's the potential of God, as it were, in pure poetic language. I am just beyond, in a different dimension altogether. Do not look for me in identification with or opposition to something, right? I have no attributes. There is nothing out of me. There is nothing that is not me. I am where desire and fear are not, right? Because desire is the assumption that I'm this point and not that point, and I want to be that point. And the fear is I am this point and not that point, and that one might be bigger than me, right? And so those things, when you know yourself to be the dream, where you are equally every point in that dream because you've withdrawn the idea of particular, you are no longer afraid and you are no longer needy. I am where desire and fear are not. Now, what is your experience? Do you also feel that you stand totally aloof from all transient things? We've got a very bold questioner here. He says, yes, I do. Right? Yes, I do. And the funny thing is that it really, we all will say this at some point in some way. You know, it's like, yes, I do to some extent. Why? Because we have a concept of it that we've simplified to the point of thinking that we understand it. And because we have an intellectualized knowledge of it, and we don't know the difference between that and an unspoken reality, we'll sometimes think that we have a spiritual maturity because we understand a concept or we understand a word or we have a Sanskrit word for it. You know, the more aloof we can get by describing it in big words. That was one of the things I learned up at Holy Cross Monastery, is that in Christianity, there is literally a name and a word for everything. If you pick up some vestment or something and there's a little button on the top left corner of the collar, that will have a specific clerical name reference to it, right? Sanskrit, same way. You know, you read the scriptures. There are specific words for everything. That's great and it's wonderful, but it can be terribly dangerous because sometimes you think you know something because you know the word for it, right? You think you know something because you have a word for it. You know, the way I think of this is like sometimes you go to the doctor with something wrong, right? I was having terrible stomach trouble at one point. I'm sorry, this is going to get a little weird and personal. I'm pushing through it because that's the way I like to play. So I go to the doctor. I have terrible stomach problems at this point, at some point. And I'm telling him, oh, this is happening. It's constantly, it's aching and churning and just blah, blah, blah. And he runs all kinds of tests, and I have to call back, and I have to come back, and I have to call back, and I have to come back, and I have to call back and come back. And after I've been doing this for like 3 or 4 weeks, I come into his office and he says, well, you've got IBS. And I was like, oh, thank God we know what it is. I said, what is that? He said, irritable bowel syndrome. And I said, well, what is that? He says, well, it's when your bowels are irritable uncontrollably. I said, yeah, that's what I told you the first day I came in here. What? So what? So what? But you see the delusion. We'll give it a word, and now we know what it is. Oh, I've been diagnosed. Well, what's a diagnosis? It's just assigning a word to a condition, right? Hopefully they have a set of cures or fixes for that. But for IBS, they don't. They give you the name and send you home and send the bill to your insurance company. You know, you're like, you didn't fix it. He's like, yeah, go to a dietitian. And then you have to do all the work yourself. Stop eating and drinking everything and then add one thing at a time. And by the time you're 77, you realize that you fixed it and something else is ruining it. Anyway, so this is the danger of philosophy. And this is the danger of reading as spiritual progress. We are not collecting information, and building a castle of thoughts in philosophy will not take you forward and will not get you there. And if it did, you've been lied to and you know nothing. You know less than you knew when you began. You have to step outside. We just finished a retreat this week, last weekend in Colorado. And when I was thinking about doing the retreat, I'm beginning to feel stupid in my life, and I'm beginning to feel unhelpful to others because I'm seeing so very clearly that information is not what we need. Every single one of you right now has enough knowledge of things and descriptions and relationships and all of that to realize God. You have more, you have infinitely more than you need right now. Your spiritual awakening does not exist in anything that I can tell you. What we're trying to do is create a koan, a Buddhist koan out of life, telling you something that's paradoxical and cannot be true, so that you sit there and think about it so hard that at some point it throws you out of mind. That's what a koan is supposed to do. You're supposed to sit there and be like, God, how do I make sense of this? You think and 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 you think, and eventually the spring breaks and you get thrown out of mind, and for a moment you get a glimpse of what was being pointed out. Right? What you need in your life is not another class. I say that and I imagine myself logging in next Thursday and nobody's there. But you're not needing another class. You're not needing to get another piece of information. That is not what is preventing your realization. You simply need to sit down, find your courage, give yourself permission, and let go of everything that occurs to you in your mind. That's all you need. And so for our retreat this week, we did have classes and stuff, but what we did is every hour on the hour, we meditated for 10 minutes, right? And then we filled the remaining 50 minutes with things that would keep our mind in that calm state. That's what you need. You need to find your courage to let go of things, to give yourself permission to let go of every thought that occurs to you. Everything that you hear in your mind, to take a step back and look at it. Don't ever be it. Don't ever think that it has something to do with you. Don't ever think that it's separate from you. Simply let it arise and let it go. Let it arise and let it go. And that will go on for a long time, and you'll be thinking, what the heck am I up to here? I'm wasting all this time. But in fact, at some point, you'll actually let go. And in that silence that happens at first, you're still going to be learning things. In that silence, many things are going to come to your awareness that don't come when the mind is noisy. And you'll learn a lot of things that you'll get really frustrated because they're beautiful and they're wonderful, and you can't tell anybody about them because there's no way to tell them. And you start talking, and all you do is start giggling because you realize how ridiculous the whole paradigm is. That here we come together to talk about things that cannot be talked about. Here we come and try and learn about things that are not a matter of learning. And yet it plays a role because it keeps building a koan that you keep trying to understand and trying to grasp. And the paradox at some point will become so great, and you're focused well enough because you've spent a life thinking about things, that the koan and the paradox of it will throw you out of mind. That is realization. When you just finally throw up everything and sit down and say, I can't do this. And at the moment that you throw up everything and you sit down and say, I cannot do this, not as a statement, but as a reality, Mother will fall in your lap or pick you up into her arms, or you'll have a flash of knowing. However you want to, whatever words you want to describe it with, you'll do it based on your preferred delusions. Oh, this is what I experienced. Oh, this is what is true, right? And you give it those names. So this is the danger we're talking about, thinking that we know something because we've intellectualized it, because we've put a handle on it that we can pick it up with. Who is God? Oh, he's Brahman, right? We've got a name for something. It's funny because Brahman is a name for that which cannot be named. And you wonder why we're deluded, right? We say Brahman and we're like, oh, then we try and understand Brahman. Well, the thing to understand about Brahman is that it's a sound that has no form attached to it, right? You can't have a name with no form. Name and form are always together. But now we have a name of something that has no form. And what's it do? Immediately your mind makes a form for it, whatever it is. Oh, it's that thing which can become anything. But you've already broken the law. It seems like a thing that can become anything as long as you're separate from it and looking at it and describing it as a thing that can become anything. But you were wrong in your assumption. Your theory was wrong, and so any theories you build on top of that theory are going to be fundamentally flawed. So stop trying to find names for things and become the observer. Give yourself permission to let go of your favorite thing of all, yourself. Let go. It's a terrifying thing, isn't it? You know, I'm going to tell that I went blackwater rafting in New Zealand. That's rafting an underground river. And we went into a cave and we were in pitch black for hours rafting this underground river. And at one point the river goes off a waterfall, and we had little helmets with 40-watt bulbs on it. And I stood at the top of the waterfall and I looked down and my light couldn't hit the water below. It was down there. I was like, oh my gosh. And they asked me to turn around backwards and to bend over, and they squeezed my inner tube over my bent over body, and they pushed me off that cliff backwards in my inner tube in that bent over state. And I fell for a couple of seconds and then splashed in the water. But that moment of falling backwards into darkness with no knowledge of how far you're going to fall, there was a reason it took two men to push me, right? And this is our state, because that is a very nice metaphor for exactly what your meditation is. It's falling off backwards into the dark and letting go of everything, accepting it at that moment. So he thinks he knows something. He says, yes, I do occasionally. He says, do you also feel that you are totally aloof from all transient things? And the questioner says, well, yes, I do occasionally. And it's possible. We get a notion or feeling of this every now and then. But at once, a sense of danger sets in. Okay? That's his hint right there that he doesn't ever experience this. Because if you stand totally aloof from all transient things, there's still an I that feels a sense of danger from that condition. And this is why it's so hard to realize God. Because we don't believe in a pure, divine love that has no conditions. We don't believe in our ultimate safety, that we are all right all the way down. We can't accept that there's not something wrong with us, a limitation that needs to be fixed. We're afraid of grace because we think there's something in us that is beyond grace. And so we have to take control and try and fix that thing. But it is by grace alone, we know, by the truth of the nature of the universe, that at its fundamental core, it is safe and it is beautiful. And it manifests acceptance. It manifests oneness, which is love. What the Bhaktas call love is oneness of the Jnani, that unity. Yes, I do occasionally, but at once a sense of danger sets in. I feel isolated. That was the first thing Adam and Eve felt when they ate that fruit of the knowledge of good and evil, right? They felt separated. They felt isolated. They felt small, outside of all relationship with others, alone, right? We had a sense of loneliness. That's one of the most beautiful things that spiritual practice can cure, is that sense of loneliness. That sense of loneliness can disappear. You see, here lies the difference in our mentalities. With the Hindu, the emotion follows the thought. Give a Hindu an idea and his emotions are roused. With the Westerner, it is the opposite. Give him an emotion and he will produce an idea. Your ideas are very attractive intellectually, but emotionally I do not respond. Maharaj, I can just see him just taking a deep breath at this point, like, set your intellect aside, which is the same thing as him just looking at him, getting real close to him and saying, stop it. Stop it. You know, Saturday Night Live had a wonderful skit one time. The world's most expensive and successful psychotherapist, right? And so this woman goes to see this man, and she's like, I understand you're the greatest therapist in the world and that your method always produces results. He says, yes, that is true. And she starts to tell him the problem. He says, stop, you have to pay first, because people never want to pay when they get the answer. And so she says, okay, how much is it? And that's an enormous sum of money. She gives it to him. And then she goes in and she's beginning to describe her problem. And she's getting into it, and it's coming more and more and more. And at some point, he slams his hand on the table and he says, stop it. And she's startled. And she's like, but we're finished. We're finished. And he walks out of the office. You know, that was the message of the world's greatest psychotherapist. As she began to delve into her problems and get all involved in the whole story of her childhood and who did what to her when, bang, stop it. That's what Vedanta says. That's Vedanta in 2 words. Stop it. Stop thinking that you are the result of subject, object, verb. Stop thinking that there's causation and that this produced that and that produced this and you got entangled and became, and now I do, and now I think, and now I see. Stop it. That's all you need to know. Ramakrishna says the same about the Gita. What's the essence of the Gita? Stop it. Renounce. Tagi. Right? That's the message. The sum total of all Vedanta, stop it. So you want philosophy? Stop it. You think you need to do something to be what you are? Stop it. You think that you're a particular that's small and afraid? Stop it. You think that you're impure, stop it. You think that God is separate from you, stop it. You think the universe is separate from you, stop it. That's all. How are you going to stop it? Pick a yoga and play around long enough until you realize I can't do anything, and it stops of its own accord. Right? But don't think knowing that will take you there. It's a game. It's one of those puzzles where you sit there and look at it for hours, you do nothing, and then you push one little brick through and the whole thing falls apart. This is what we're doing. So sit and observe and stop it. That's all. Set your intellect aside. Do not use it in these matters. Wow, what a teaching. How are you going to come up with a question with no intellect, without using the intellect? How are you going to think about what you don't know if you're not employing the intellect? Right? Set your intellect aside. Don't use it in these matters. What's he really telling you there? Silence. You, in your essence, are silence. You're not the thought that pops into your head when you're silent. You are silence. If you're the silence, anything can pop into you, but it's meaningless to you. You are the substrate of silence, which allows for every word, every thought, every experience. But you are not the word, thought, or experience. You are the silence that allows it. So when you're sitting there, don't listen to yourself think, because yourself doesn't think. You are not the thought. You are the silence that allowed that thought. You were the silence that was there before that thought, and you are the silence that will be there after that thought. And every thought you will ever have will point at you. If you don't fall into the trap that I'm the thought, or that is my thought, or I'm thinking, you are not thinking. It is not your thought, and it is not in relationship with you. You are the silence that contains all thought. Right? And that silence that we are is not an absence. It is the possibility of everything. So it's not a depressing thought to be nothing, because you are the nothing. You are the space that allows for objects and the silence that allows for music. Everything points at you. Let the noise indicate you, and follow what it's pointing to. Good luck following something that's pointing at you. So set your intellect aside. Oh, it's 10:02. Oh, no, it's 9:02. All right. We're stopping suddenly and abruptly at that point. Let me turn off the recorder.